I know you would all love to play XFL fantasy football right now, but I have news for you. There is NFL fantasy football right at this moment. But if you're a super fan, like we are at XFL News Hub, you might want, for fun, stash a couple XFL guys on your fantasy team. Are these guys going to be big playmakers? We're not sure. A lot to be determined. Everything that's going on. There could be guys benched. These guys could make the practice squad, maybe make it up to the roster, and people get sick. We don't know. But we thought it'd be fun to look at 3 XFL sleepers that you could potentially put on your fantasy team to really impress your friend. And if you're an XFL super fan, you got to draft an XFL guy. It can be the last pick, as I have done, and I'll explain in a little bit. So some guys, remember back in the day, Tommy Maddox went from the XFL to the NFL and was the comeback player of the year in 2002. So it's possible that some of these guys might break out in the NFL. So we go down the list. First up, tight end Donald Parham, Chargers. We know about all of him, 6'8", 7-foot wingspan. He's got hands. He's got the speed to go along with it. He's a big target. We'll see what the Chargers do. We have Pep Hamilton with the Chargers. So and he's familiar with Donald Parham. So we'll see if he makes the roster. They still have a lot of good tight ends. But if a couple injuries here and there, we could see Parham in the mix. Last time I checked, he was potentially 3rd or 4th on the depth chart. So he could definitely be a guy that you could stash and try to be cool and put on your fantasy football team. Number 2 is Jaquez Patrick, running back. Now, Vipers fans know how their rushing attack was with Devon Smith and Jaquez Patrick tearing it up, and they started to come on strong towards the end of the 5-game season. They were really putting in, but he's a 6'3", 235 pound, and he's built like a linebacker, 4.5 speed. He could be a potential guy to stash on your roster. Now, they've got Joe Mixon, who always seems to get injured. Giovanni Bernard, who's been on my fantasy team before. You think he's going to break out and doesn't do anything. And then Samarje Pernier is another guy. So potentially, they also have 6th-rounder Trayvon Williams, and that was from 2019 on the roster as well. So Patrick, he's got his work cut out for him, but he could potentially see some playing time. Really, maybe in the NFL. And the last one, Cam Phillips. We all know his story, wide receiver. Of course, P.J. Walker is a given because he'll probably be the backup. It's between P.J. Walker and Will Grier. I would have a feeling P.J. will be the backup just because of his familiarity with his coach, Matt Rule. But Cam Phillips is a guy that I've already seen higher on the depth charts than I had thought. And he's only been there a week or two. Really, fingers crossed that he makes the team and potentially P.J. Walker gets some playing time and those two can light it up again in the NFL, which would be fantastic. But he's got to fight for targets with the team. You got Christian McCaffrey, who gets 100 targets a game, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Curtis Samuel. So the 4th spot in the wide receiving core as a teeny guy that can run with some speed and stretch the defense could potentially be a great asset for the Carolina Panthers. And for the record, in my draft that I just had this past weekend, with the final pick in the 16th round, your pal Mark took former Virginia Tech Hokie Cam Phillips in my fantasy draft. And everybody that knows me and that knows the draft and knows about XFL were not surprised that I took Cam Phillips. So who would you take? Would you take one of these guys from the list or somebody else? Leave us a comment who you would stash from the XFL on your fantasy football team. If you were really brazen, that is.